a numbness where you go through the rhythm of it all, but you don't feel it, right? Because you're numb, because you had to disconnect in order to survive, and you don't trust anybody. So that impacts relationships too. When you don't trust God and you don't trust yourself, you definitely can't trust other people. So everybody's looking for something from you. This is the mindset. Everybody is out to get you. No one has your best interest in mind. All of these are survival tactics that we use to get through. But it can all lead up to this numbness. This numbness, because what we have learned in the story we've told ourselves is not only is it not safe out there, it's also not safe in here. That's why you had to disconnect, because it wasn't safe in here.
Here we grow again, our hearts on the mend. What I want is what I want, soft spaces.
Welcome to Softspaces podcast, where I share a little bit of me to connect with a little bit of you and build a community of wholeness together with our unmuted voices, using them so that we can all thrive in every area of our life. My name's Yolanda Lewis. I am your host, and I'm glad you are here. I'm glad you're here, for real. I'm glad you're here. Today, I want to talk about and want us to really jam on the concept of healing with God in trauma, healing with God in trauma. And this topic is important because so many of us who are in or have been in a religious institution like Christendom, and that's my background. As a initial part of my healing journey, that was all that I knew. And I remember when I wrote my first book, it was about my experience overcoming some of the impact, right? The layers that I had unfolded up to that point, but the impact of sexual childhood trauma. And when I wrote this first book, I remember I had all kinds of friends read it. Even my husband had his friends being supportive just because I was the first author we had all known. And I'd cracked the code and figured out how to publish. So everybody read the book. One person, though, his feedback struck me. It was one of those times where everything paused after he said it. And his statement was that, wow, the story was really intimate, the book was really good. However, the healing only came from one perspective. And he asked, did I research any other perspectives? And at that time, I was like, no. Like, why? Like, this is the way I know. And I know it's not the end all be all, but it is one way to help you get your healing. But it made me think. It had me to consider, wow, what other ways can I be looking at how to heal? So in the book, I give, a multi-step process on how you can start your healing journey. And if you have experienced the unfortunate experience of sexual childhood trauma, please get that book. It will help you and give you a place to start. What was unique, though, was that there was more, and he was picking at my unpeeled onion layers. That's what was happening in that moment. He was picking at my unhealed onion layers I wasn't ready to address yet, which is why they weren't in the book at that time. And of course, if I was to write a book on that now, it would be much more robust. And that's okay. We write for where we're at in the journey, and the people that resonate with whatever book you write are 5 steps behind where you were when you wrote it. So you're always helping someone. I don't want you to hear this and be like, oh man, I need to rewrite all my books. No, you do not. You do not need to rewrite your books. You do, however, want to allow yourself to grow and maturate in your healing journey. That being said, there's 3 points I want you to consider as you're doing that, as you're going about your healing journey and healing with God. I want to call out a couple of things, 3 things. Number 1, the first thing that was skewed for me was, and I find this in all of the people that I coach and have mentored and spoken to at conferences, women's events, etc. When it comes to trauma, you have a distorted view of yourself and of God. A distorted view of yourself and of God. So let me explain a little bit how that played out for me. For me, I was so disconnected from my body and other faculties, mind, spirit. I was disconnected. I was literally, I guess you could say, 3 different people. I was 3 different entities separate. That was how I was able to survive the traumatic experience of being molested. Is you disconnect. You have to disconnect. You can't be whole in that situation. But what I do know is to survive it, you disconnect. And what I've heard from other survivors of that experience is you disconnect. And as I understand trauma to be, as I shared in other episodes, my favorite definition is by Dr. Gabriel Maté, where he says trauma is not the thing that happened to us. Trauma is the response our body gives from what happened to us. So if I look at trauma from that angle, the response was to disconnect. And I imagine that in any traumatic experience, whether it's a loss of job, that's traumatic because your whole world could be upending. That's traumatic. Whether it's a loss of any kind, a friend or a position or a change, that might be traumatic for you, where something is literally just changing. You have to move. That could be traumatic. Whatever the trauma, disconnection from your members can be how you survive. Why? Because when you disconnect, you no longer feel. That's the point of disconnection. So you do not feel what is happening to you. Mind, body, spirit. You don't want to feel what is happening. So you disconnect. And what that does when you disconnect from yourself, you don't see you the way others see you. You don't see you the way God sees you. You don't see you in the lens of peace. You're seeing you through a lens that is disconnected. Imagine looking at glasses. I actually wear glasses, so if I'm looking at a camera now, for those who are just listening, I can't see it. I can't see the camera. I know I'm there, but and that's good enough so that I can have this conversation with you. However, if I were to look through glasses that were not in the frame correctly, it would skew how I see even myself on this video, even though the video is a mirror of what I look like. And how that plays out in real time is, you're beautiful. You are beautiful. You've been told every day of your life, you are gorgeous. However, when you look in the mirror because of your trauma and through the lens of trauma and the disconnection of self, you don't see beauty. You see something else. You see shame. You see guilt. You see ugliness. You see devastation. You see disappointment. You don't see the beauty that you are. You don't see the beauty that you are. And when I say ugly, I don't mean necessarily features. I mean the ugliness of the dirt and the grime that you had been exposed to. So you disconnect so you can smile. You disconnect so you can live. You disconnect so you can keep moving forward. And so then when we're disconnected from ourselves, right? The God that lives inside of us, we're disconnected from that also. Holy Spirit, we're disconnected from that also. So disconnection happens from the distorted view you have of yourself and of God, which also extends into community as well. You might be offensive to the littlest things, right? That might offend you. You are very offensive, like everything offends you. You are easily offended. Distorted view of self and God. The other piece, second, number 2, is an erosion of faith. So when you go through an experience where it feels like it's unfair, right? This traumatic experience, it feels unfair. Why me? Why me? Why did this happen to me? Or where were you, God? Why didn't you save me? Why didn't you fix it? Why didn't you change it? Why didn't you wave your magic wand and make it all better? Erosion of faith. Those messages that we tell ourselves of God wasn't there. I was by myself. And you may have been. You may have been. You may have felt that way, that you were. I remember, and I'm pausing because I'm remembering my first experience where I hid behind the door. There was a break in the act. And when that break happened, I got up confused, because I was only 3.5. I got up confused, totally confused, and ran behind the door because I was scared and I didn't want to get in trouble. And in that moment, I was getting ready to dart out of the room and run over to the living room so that I could be safe. I heard a voice say, "Not yet." It was very loud, and to the point where like I stopped. I was almost like out the room. I stopped and went back behind the door. And I asked the voice back. I paused for a moment, asked the voice back, "When?" And then I didn't hear anything. Then I heard, "Go, now." And as I went, my perpetrator was passing me as I went, so they couldn't stop me to say, "Come back." I was in the cross path of being seen by adults, so it would have been obvious that something bad and negative was going on. So even in that horrific moment of being violated and my innocence literally just dissipating from my grasp, I believe God was there helping me to get out. And I didn't know to listen, or I didn't know to pray. I didn't know nothing about that at that age. But I knew I heard a voice, and I knew I didn't question listening to it. I knew the voice, almost like I knew the voice. Fast forward in other facets of life, I'm not sure that I listened to that voice. So I can't say that it wasn't there because I'm not sure that I listened to it. But the story that I tell myself is that God is always there. He's accessible. And if I need him, I have access. I can call and I have access. I have access to tap into a power greater than mine, greater than what I can do on my own. I can tap into that power. But it takes time to get to that place when you've seen so much darkness, when you've lived in dark places and been in dark spaces. It's hard to see where your help is at. Where is it? Every experience, I can look back from that moment on, every experience broke down my trust for God, so that later I couldn't hear it, and I chose not to hear it, maybe even. Because my faith had been eroded. It had been worn down to where it was like, there ain't no way. Ain't no way you're anywhere in what I'm dealing with, because I don't see you. And I can't feel you because I'm disconnected from my body because I needed to survive. And now I don't believe because I've had to disconnect to survive. And so there is a point, I believe very strongly, that we are never so far gone that we are unreachable and unattainable for God to touch and reach out to us. I don't believe that. I believe we are always within his grasp, within his reach. I might not be able to reach you, but he can always reach you. He can always reach you. And usually that happens through experience. That happens through experiences where you have nowhere else to turn but to God. Nowhere. There's nowhere else. Your mom's not available. Your dad ain't available. Your sister's not available to talk to. Your brother, your cousin, your favorite auntie, your grandma, grandpa. Nobody's available. It's just you and him. He knows how to pull us back. He knows how to bring us home. He knows how to bring us home. Erosion of trust has to be built. I didn't know who he was. So even though I knew who he was, I didn't know who he was, right? I didn't understand. I couldn't connect. I couldn't connect because I was so far disconnected. I knew scripture. I grew up playing Bible Pictionary. I knew scripture. I knew how to have church, which is why I hate when people play church. I'm not a fan of that. That's my personal thing. Call me deep. I don't care. That's how I feel about it. So I knew all those things, but because I had trust issues, I couldn't let that knowledge really all the way in. I couldn't let the message really penetrate. I couldn't let his spirit really, 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 really fill me up. Just a little bit. As much as I could control, that's how much I let in. Because I had to learn how to trust God. Not just know scriptures that say trust God. I had to learn how to do that. And God was patient. And he gave me grace so that I could. He knew I'd get it after a while. He knew, and he waited for me, and as always, just loved up on your girl. And I know he's doing the same for you. I know it. No matter what trauma you're experiencing, I know that trust in God can be rebuilt. It can be rebuilt. You can reconnect. You can. You can. So erosion of trust, that was the second piece. And the last piece was numbness to spirituality and connection. Just a numbness where you go through the rhythm of it all, but you don't feel it, right? Because you're numb. Because you had to disconnect in order to survive. And you don't trust anybody. So that impacts relationships too. When you don't trust God and you don't trust yourself, you definitely can't trust other people. So everybody's looking for something from you. This is the mindset. Everybody is out to get you. No one has your best interest in mind. All of these are survival tactics that we use to get through. But it can all lead up to this numbness. This numbness, because what we have learned in the story we've told ourselves is not only is it not safe out there, it's also not safe in here. That's why you had to disconnect, because it wasn't safe in here. Inside, it wasn't safe. And when it's not safe, you do everything in your power to not be in here. So you might drink, you might smoke, you might eat, overeat, right? Too much drink. Smoking to this coming out your chimney. Your ears are like a chimney. And you could pick your pleasure, pick your passion in terms of smoking, however you want to read that. No judgment. I'm just stating the facts, right? I'm just putting it on the table. Numbness. because you're trying to cope with getting through. I get it. I see you. I hear you. I feel you because I did it all. I tried all them things. Eating was the one that stuck. And I'm working on that. That's my thing I'm working on. I've shared it in many episodes. You're going to see me slim down. Not yet, but you're going to see me slim down soon. And you'll know that I worked at reconnecting and remembering, putting it all back together, remembering a coming home. I want that wholeness. You know, emotions are the language of the body, right? When we cry, that emotion is sadness. And so the body's language then is to cry. If the emotion is sadness, our body's language is to cry. If the emotion is anger, our body's language might be squinched up face and squinched up lips and so forth. With your soul, the soul's language is desire. That inclination and calling and drawing to wholeness, to coming home. That is your soul speaking, that drawing, that earning, that desire to be like, I don't want to be like this anymore. I don't want to be snappy at people anymore. I don't want to be angry at people anymore. That's your soul unnumbing itself. It's telling you it's ready to defrost. It's telling you it's ready to feel. It's ready to remember, to connect to our Creator. So how do you do that? I want to give you a couple of ways of how you can do that. The first is to be honest with the awareness that is coming up. So whatever is coming up for you, even right now, as you're hearing this and you're listening with your mind, with your body, all 5 senses, with your soul, what is coming up for you as trauma that wants to come out? We want to honor that by acknowledging it, by speaking it out. I remember the first part of my healing journey happened in my college dorm room. It was a dream. I had to remember the experience, my first experience, standing behind the door, that first experience. I had to remember it because what I had done was freeze, right? At the emotion. I disconnected and then I froze. So, there's fight, flight, fawn, freeze. I froze. And when I froze, my emotion froze. So I needed to re-experience that trauma in my dream so that I could unfreeze the emotion so it could pass through my body and I could finally let it out. Sometimes what that might look like is just tearful. I think I cried that day for like an hour straight. I cried because it really happened. I tried to suppress it. It really happened. It really happened. That blew my mind that this really happened to me. Then I cried for the actual experience. I didn't like any of it. I didn't want any of it. I didn't understand it. I cried for that too because I didn't even know what was going on to be able to say no to. I had trusted this person so much. They were literally my favorite cousin, literally. I trusted them so much. I cried for that. I cried for my innocence being taken from me in a way that I could never get back. I never could go back. I cried for a whole bunch of things because the emotion had unfrozen and was able to process. What are you holding? Where are you frozen? Consider where you might be frozen and consider the ways in which you can now release, because you're aware. You can now admit in this soft space where no one is judging you, where no one's going to tell you you were bad and you were wrong, where we're going to hold you, where you are safe to cry, where you're safe to be angry, where you're safe to be melancholy and quiet. This is the soft, safe space for you. It's soft. It's soft here. So, acknowledging what the awareness of your body and your mind and your spirit is bringing up. That's number one. Then number two, the second thing you can do is give yourself permission to feel. That was one of the hardest lessons that I learned, was giving myself permission to feel. I wasn't allowed to feel certain emotions. And when you're not allowed to process negative emotion and experience negative emotion when you're growing up in your child development, it creates dependencies and attachment disorders, if you will. And so you can find yourself either trying to attach to things that don't want you because of the whole chase of trying to connect to it. You're used to having to fight for connection because you missed it. Or you can find yourself being drawn to all kinds of attachment disorders. Even still, allowing yourself to feel and say and speak the words that you feel a certain way are powerful. You might need to write them down. When you're giving yourself permission to feel, you want to be aware of the message that you've been telling yourself. So in the first part, you're addressing it by acknowledging what's coming up. In the second part, you're giving yourself permission to feel and maybe even documenting how you feel. So you can look at it and be like, wow, I'll never forget, I didn't realize how poorly I talked to myself. I would never talk to a friend the way that I was talking to myself. The conversations we were having in my mind, there's a party in my head, y'all. The way we were having conversation, it was so hard, negative, and harsh. It was just harsh and negative and mean, and just it wasn't good talk. How are you talking to yourself? And then what you want to do in that same space is rub that up against what you hear God saying about you. What do you hear God saying about you? I put my last dollar on the fact that he says, you're beautiful. Even still, no matter what happened to you, there's still beauty there. There's still beauty there. There's still strength there. There's still love there. Capacity to love. There is still love there. There's still happiness there. You can smile. He loves when you smile. I love when you smile. I want to see you smile. Big smile. Everybody just pause for a second. Big smile. Cheese. I used to do this exercise. I directed a play here in Atlanta. It was called Believe. It was a Christmas stage play at Changing a Generation Full Gospel Baptist Church. We used their stage, and it was awesome. It was so, so awesome. But in it, when I was directing, I would open rehearsal up with a breathing exercise that was fun. And so we'd breathe in, breathe out 2 times, and then the last breath, we would laugh hysterically, like force the laugh out, like get it out. And it was so fun because when you start the laugh, it feels like, you're forcing it, and you are. But by the end of the laugh, there's so many giggles and snickers, and everybody's all loose. So, yeah, go ahead and laugh. Like literally make yourself laugh. And you'll find that you actually really will start laughing. All that to say, express the emotion that's holding. Listen to what God is saying. If you need to document what you say, and then write down right next beside it, right next to it, right beside it, what you know God is saying, and see if you're saying the same thing. If you are not, I need you to upgrade your language and start speaking in your highest self, to your higher self, in your highest self. I need you to speak in your highest self the way God would speak to you. That kindness. And the third thing that you can do is to listen. We're so quick to pray and talk and still do those things. However, after you pray and talk, sit in a quiet space, in a quiet place. Soft space, quiet place. There you go. Sit in a soft space, quiet place and listen. Listen. There's so much power in being still, because it allows us to be open to whatever may be coming, right? Whatever good thing is coming, when you sit still in that soft space and quiet place, you're being open to say, hey, God, I'm here. I'm literally carving out special time to shut my mouth and hear what you would have me to say and hear what you would have for me to hear. Not just to say, but to hear, so that I can live in a healed, thriving space in every area of my life. And as a bonus, you can breathe. As we come to a close of every episode of our podcast, we take time to breathe. And when we're breathing, we're taking 2 deep breaths in and 2 exhales out. So we'll do one at a time, of course. If you are driving, please do not close your eyes. Yet, I want you to be present in the moment as much as possible. If you feel you need to continue breathing after we're done, please do so. This is the soft space, and I am inviting you to share it with me. So, we're going to begin by a deep breath in through your nostrils, and when you can, you take one more, and then you exhale. And when you exhale, your body may feel like it needs to make a sound, and if it does, that's okay. Let it. Let's do it together. Deep inhale. One more. And exhale. As you exhale, I want you to notice what your body is trying to say to you. I want you to notice your surroundings and how your body feels in the space that you are in right now. What message are your emotions trying to communicate? What desire is your soul calling you towards? Deep breath in through your nose. One more. And exhale. I want to thank you for joining me in this soft space. And I hope that you will continue to cultivate a soft space throughout your entire day. In the meantime, take care. God bless, and I'll see you on the next episode.